Welcome to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for joining us. Of course, this is the free weekly newsletter that we read every week, and my world has been very involved with MMA here of late. We are working on the Annual Forecast 2026 book, which is the 50th edition that Ray has been doing this since 1976. So everybody's kind of chipping in here, and Puyan Zolfagarnia has written this week's newsletter, and this is chock full of amazing astrology, especially the last section, and I'll preface that more when we get there. First of all, let's start off with an article about AI from the Wall Street Journal this past week. Signs of an AI bubble abound. Stock valuations have become uncomfortably rich. AI-related debt is ballooning, and a sustainable financial model for the technology has largely yet to emerge. Now Michael Burry, the investor who famously predicted the subprime mortgage bubble bursting 2 decades ago, is betting that 2 stocks at the heart of the artificial intelligence trade are set for a fall. Burry bought options that will pay off if shares of NVIDIA and Palantir drop, according to a securities filing on Monday. The bets involve more than $900 million of Palantir shares and more than $200 million of NVIDIA shares at current prices." End quote. Now, Puyan's thoughts on the week past, he says, "Since discovering astrology, I have been drawn to the idea of linking past market crashes with planetary movements to anticipate the timing and nature of the next financial bubble. I do not claim to have uncovered the full system, but it remains a worthy pursuit. In studying the 2008 crisis, I noticed that Uranus, the planet of disruption and the boom-bust cycle, was in the water sign of Pisces. While Ray has correlated this period with a 77% fall in crude oil, an asset that is ruled by Pisces, I propose a broader view. Uranus occupied the water trigon of Cancer, homes and real estate, Scorpio, debt and credit, and Pisces, complex and obscure financial instruments such as mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations. These opaque products encouraged reckless risk-taking and fueled the bubble that eventually burst. With Pluto, the planet of manipulation, entering Capricorn, it was clear that the true architects of the collapse were the banks and financial institutions. What then are the heavens revealing to us now? And is Michael Burry's trade well-founded? Uranus has begun its ingress into Gemini, and after a brief return to Taurus, it will remain there for 7 years from April 2026. The air signs govern the mind, ideas, communication, and technology, while Gemini rules programming, media, software, transportation, and trading. With Uranus, the planet of innovation, in Gemini, the sign of intelligence, the next boom-bust cycle may well emerge in artificial intelligence. As Pluto advances through Aquarius, the mantle of power shifts from the banks to the new tech oligarchs, the wealthy figures driving the AI revolution, who may be overvaluing its promise and burdening their enterprises with excessive debt. In short, while he may be a little early, Michael Burry does seem to be on the right track. All 3 U.S. stock markets closed down this week on the back of concerns over the monetization of AI technology and the vast circular spending within the industry. Consequently, the Nasdaq saw the biggest weekly drop since April. This was also reflected in Japan's Nikkei, which formed an all-time high early in the week before giving it all back and dropping 6.7%. In fact, most indices fell across the board, from the Australian ASX 200 to India's Nifty, the UK's FTSE, and the German DAX. China's SSE index was more resilient, closing the week up, but still not able to take out last week's all-time high following the positive news of the U.S.-China trade talks. In the Americas, the real talk of the markets has been Argentina's Merval, having rallied over 90% over 7 weeks, following Milei's decisive win in the 2025 midterm elections. The Merval has now broken out of the bearish price channel that it has been in since January of 2025. Brazil's Bovespa index continues to rally to a new all-time high this week, and South Africa's Johannesburg Stock Index has experienced a minor drop for 3 weeks following the October all-time high. The precious metals continued their consolidation within the bounds of the prior week. Bitcoin and Ethereum remain within a bearish pattern, putting in new lows in the time band for a primary cycle trough, or a cycle bottom. Bitcoin ends its 30th week, having formed its major cycles in the 10th and 20th weeks. Crude oil continues its long consolidation under the heavy presence of Saturn in Pisces. The grains continued their spectacular rally following the return of Chinese demand last week. Now we turn the page to the short-term geocosmics. Puyan continues. We had an important week of geocosmic activities, with Mars opposing Uranus on Tuesday. In the geopolitical world, we saw President Trump and Putin ramp up the military, Mars, rhetoric around nuclear Uranus testing. We also saw the unfortunate crash, Uranus, of a UPS cargo plane as it exploded into a ball of flames a day after Mars, fire, joined Mercury, the Postal Service, in Sagittarius, airplane. With Venus squaring Pluto on Friday, many markets closed lower. Over this weekend, Mercury will turn retrograde on Sunday, November 9th, at 2 degrees Sagittarius, followed by Jupiter's retrograde on Tuesday, November 11th, at 25 degrees Cancer. Together, these planetary shifts mark an important critical reversal date and appear to be setting up a potentially strong trading opportunity across several markets. For traders who want to stay ahead of these powerful cycles, the MMA Weekly Market Comments and Trade Recommendations offers an in-depth analysis and timely guidance each week. Information on that, of course, is at MMAcycles.com. Now we turn the page to the longer-term thoughts and opinion. This is merging politics with astrology, but I have to tell you, this is an amazing astrological read of a new political figure on the scene. If you're here just for the financial part, that is now complete, but if you're here for some astrology, buckle up. And to begin, an article from Wednesday's Wall Street Journal editorial board. Zoran Mamdani won his race for mayor on Tuesday, and it wasn't close. The people have spoken, for better or worse, and his voters were willing to take a risk on his radicalism in the name of change. We'll soon learn if the 34-year-old assemblyman has a pragmatic streak or sees his mission as making the city that never sleeps a socialist lab experiment." End quote. Now here's Puyan's astrological take on this. The position of New York City's mayor is one of the most powerful and visible local offices in the world. The city's economy rivals that of many countries, and the office is often a stepping stone to higher power, which is why Zoran Mamdani's win created such a buzz. Mamdani is widely seen as an idealistic but pragmatic progressive leader who blends grassroots activism with policy depth. He's young, charismatic, possesses intellectual rigor, and a sharp sense of justice, often described as both bold and collaborative. His leadership emphasizes inclusion, social equity, and moral clarity, often associated with the air signs of Aquarius and Libra. To understand the man, I turned to his natal chart. The first thing that caught my attention was all the key zero fixed sign placements. His ascendant is Zero Leo, which explains his charisma and magnetic presence that draws attention as he radiates with confidence. His sun is in Libra, in the 3rd house, making him a master communicator, persuasive, tactful, and seeking justice. The presence of Mars at 0 Scorpio, also in the 3rd house, adds a strategic drive beneath the calm exterior. He knows exactly when to push and when to charm, yet he can be razor-sharp when agitated. His Mercury is on the IC, which suggests deep intellect and insight, allowing him to resonate with the masses and reach the heart of the issue. With a Uranus-Neptune conjunction in the 6th house, Mamdani is a visionary reformer of public institutions and services. Yet, arguably, the most important placement is Saturn right on his descendant at 0 degrees Aquarius. along with the moon also in Aquarius and the 7th house. People will project trust and stability onto him, Saturn, as he embodies the future-oriented humanitarian archetype of Aquarius. The mix of the Leo-Aquarius axis polarity gives him both the regal presence to lead and the progressive ethos to represent the people. Having just written the chapter on the upcoming transit of Jupiter through Leo, occurring between June 2026 through July 2027 for the Forecast 2026 book, it was interesting to note that this transit often brings great leaders to the foreground, the likes of Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, Reza Shah Pahlavi, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin all shone brightly in the history books as Jupiter transited the leadership sign of Leo. Jupiter was within a 5-degree orb of Mamdani's ascendant when he won, and will be transiting both his and President Trump's first house. This is likely to propel them further into the limelight. It's also worth noting that President Trump won his second term as Jupiter, the great benefic, was transiting his sun sign of Gemini last November. Yet the more important signature within Mamdani's chart is his Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius. This is the exact degree of the December 2020 Great Conjunction between transiting Jupiter and Saturn, right on Mamdani's structural axis of partnership and public engagement. The Great Conjunction is supposed to result in major social or political shifts, marking a new era in air signs. For Mamdani, this began a new era of visibility and legitimacy in the public sphere, as he was first elected into public office as the representative of District 36 in November of 2020. This week, Jupiter, 25 degrees Cancer, and Saturn, 25 degrees Pisces, were in a harmonious trine, reactivating that 2020 seed. This is the reward phase of the synodic cycle. He won the office of mayor with the full moon on his midheaven, and transiting Venus was on his natal sun. But the real test and challenge for Mamdani will come at the opposition phase between Jupiter and Saturn, which happens from 2029 to 2031. Now looking at the synastry chart between Trump and Mamdani, and without going into a lot of detail, the most interesting placement for me is Trump's natal Jupiter is conjunct Mamdani's sun. Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Trump's Jupiter on Mamdani's sun amplifies Mamdani's presence. It suggests that, paradoxically, Trump's influence, even as a critic or a rival, helped Mamdani grow in popularity. Mamdani's ideals and political identity, the sun in Libra, found a broader platform in response to the Jupiterian, the wealthy elite, figure that Trump represented. Therefore, Trump's criticism and threats of the people of New York, ironically, inflated Mamdani's visibility. Mamdani was not wrong in identifying this influence when he asked Trump to turn the volume up during his victory speech. As always, I will end this week's column with Aquarian advice from the poet Sadi, who devoted much of his writing to the ethics of rulership and the wise exercise of authority. I would urge all leaders to read Sadi's Golistan, the floral garden, or Bustan, the orchard, so that we might yet have a chance to build heaven on earth. This is a quote from Golistan, Book 1, on Justice, Governance, and Counsel. The king who walks the path of justice, his name shall endure in the goodness of time. If he longs for his memory to live in blessing, let him not turn the hearts of the sorrowful away from kindness. And that wraps up our newsletter for this week. Puyan, thank you for that. I think many of us who have been observing this election up in New York City appreciate that take on what's going on with him. Wow. Wow, wow. All right, everybody, thank you so much. I'll see you on Monday, and then I'm going to be really light myself next week because I'm working on the audiobook part of the forecast book, and so I'm going to focus my vocal capabilities there for the week. But I will see you on Monday. Have a great rest of the weekend, and thanks for your time.